All right, everyone. Welcome to week 2 of the Lowe Down. Last week, we picked 10 games, went 8-2. There was a couple of games that probably could have gone either way, West Virginia and Pitt being one of them, but I picked Pitt to win. But what a great first weekend of college football. Of course, the big story was Florida and Anthony Richardson and their upset of Utah. But the linebacker play there from Florida was great. What a big win by the Gators. The energy down there was amazing. Of course, a lot of talk there was about LSU and FSU. But, it's week 1. Let's don't get too ahead of ourselves here. There's a lot of football left to play. I mean, LSU, they muffed 2 punts. We got a field goal block, extra point block. That's stuff that you can clean up. So if you're an LSU fan, all is not lost yet. There was a lot of positive signs in that game. Jaden Daniels being one of them. I was kind of disappointed to see Keyshawn Boute's play and the way he kind of acted. But then again, you got to get your playmakers the ball. I mean, he's one of the better playmakers in the country. I mean, and he didn't get a ball thrown to him until midway to the second quarter. So you got to get your best players the ball. I mean, that's what a coach has to do. But that game could have gone either way. I mean, LSU drove down the field there at the end and made a great run there, but just break down there on kick protection on the left side, and that's what lost them the game. And I thought Clemson looked really well. I thought they looked good. Their defense is for real. DJ Uiagalelei, he started out slow but came on strong. Had a good second half. Thought Arkansas and Cincinnati was a good ball game. The North Carolina Appalachian State game was off the chain. I didn't really understand going for 2 there at the end of the game, and then they get another chance to get back in it there at Appalachian State. But what an exciting ball game that was. And so we're going to move on to this week. And of course, right off the bat, early on is Alabama at Texas. Alabama, they just look like Alabama. The machine keeps rolling. 55-0 win over Utah State last week. And, Bryce Young looked good. Kobe Prentice, young receiver, looked good. The defense for Alabama is just sick. That's just the bottom line. And Quinn Ewers played a pretty good game for Texas last week. Bijan Robinson, ever since I watched him play as a freshman, I always have liked the kid as a player. He's a really good player. He's a great runner. He can catch the ball in the backfield. I would think Steve Sarkisian is going to lean on him a lot in this game. But then again, can you run on Alabama? That's their team strength is their run defense, or one of them. And then, of course, Will Anderson is Will Anderson, and Dallas Turner's another guy that can get after the quarterback. So I'm not sure that Texas is going to be able to block Alabama. So it's a big line in this game, but I think Alabama goes in there and handles business. I say Alabama wins 42-20. Moving to South Carolina at Arkansas, Spencer Rattler, he looked shaky last week in their win over Georgia State. But granted, Georgia State's a pretty good football team. Okay, they're an experienced bunch. But he kind of looked like he was trying to do too much. South Carolina has been the media darling all offseason, and there's a lot of attention on him. And I think sometimes as a player, you can go out and try to do too much. He threw 2 interceptions, but he played better in the second half. And, this is a tough game to call. I thought Arkansas did a good job of holding off a scrappy Cincinnati bunch last week. KJ Jefferson played a heck of a game. Raheem Sanders, their running back, he was impressive. But this game, to me, I mean, Cincinnati had plays in the passing game, and they just missed some of them. You know, and Ben Bryant passed for 325 yards and 2 touchdowns against Arkansas secondary. So that right there tells me that there's plays to be made there against Arkansas secondary. And Spencer Rattler, when he has those opportunities, he's going to have to hit plays. And to me, that's going to be huge in this game, because I think Arkansas is going to be able to run the football. I mean, that's just all there is to it. And South Carolina allowed 200 rushing yards to Georgia State. So this Arkansas rushing attack is much stronger. But I think this is going to be a good ball game. It's an early game, and I think that favors Arkansas. And I'm going to go Arkansas 34, South Carolina 21. Moving to Wake Forest and Vanderbilt. Wake Forest got some great news. Sam Hartman, who had an undisclosed illness, is going to start there at quarterback, and this is shaping up to be, who knows? I mean, Vanderbilt started 2-0 for the first time in a few years. Mike Wright, a Georgia product, dual threat there at quarterback. I think it's going to be him versus Sam Hartman, who passed for 4,228 yards and 39 TDs last year. I think this game has the makings of an offensive shootout. It's at home for Vandy, so they should have a good crowd there. If they don't, that's really disappointing. But I think something's telling me Vandy's going to hang around in this game. And Clark Lee's got his team playing inspired football, and I think they hang around in this game, and I think it's going to be a wild one. I'll say, you know, I think Wake Forest is the better team, and I think they will win, but I think Vanderbilt's going to make it, give them a run. I'll say Wake Forest 43, Vanderbilt 38. Notre Dame, Marshall travels to South Bend. Tyler Buchner there at quarterback. Notre Dame is, like I said last week, I thought Notre Dame was getting no respect. I thought, you know, their defense played really well against Ohio State last week. But I think they roll here. I think they get a win. I think Notre Dame, I'll say 35, Marshall 14. Moving on, 2:30 game, Appalachian State at Texas A&M. Texas A&M is almost a 3-touchdown favorite here. I think that's a big line. And because Chase Bryce and that offense, their offensive line is called the Bulls. And this running back, they got Nate Noel. He's a little guy, but he's shifty, and he can run and catch it out of the backfield. I watched that game last week, and what an entertaining game it was. But, I mean, Appalachian State was right there. They, like I said, I don't know why they went for 2 late in the game. I'd have kicked the field goal. You're at home. That's one thing that I don't understand. You know, if you stood neck and neck, toe-to-toe with a team, and you're at home, you know, extend the game. Keep extending the game. I mean, because you got the crowd behind you. To me, I think when you go for the win, and I think there's times to do it. I mean, but Appalachian State was right there with North Carolina. It wasn't like North Carolina was the #1 team in the country or anything like that. But you go toe-to-toe for them, and you miss a guy who was wide open for the 2-point conversion. Yeah, if they get it, yeah, it's great. But I didn't know why they didn't kick the field goal there and extend the game and keep it tied. But Haynes King's the starter there at quarterback. They played it close to the vest and went over Sam Houston State last week. But I think this has got the makings of a good game if Appalachian State can bounce back and be there mentally. But I'll give the edge to Texas A&M. But I think this is going to be a pretty good ball game. But I'll say Texas A&M wins 43-32. Moving on, Tennessee. And I'm not going to really talk about rankings right now. It's too early to rank teams. I mean, we can say this stuff, ranking teams right now is just it's dumb because we don't know enough yet. And that's what I've said about week 1. I've learned this through my time covering college football. Week 1, there's so much intel coaches can gather from playing a game, and there's so much that they can clean up. And, so you can't get too caught up on who won, who lost. I mean, but like somebody like Georgia, I think we all saw that those guys are a runaway freight train. They look phenomenal, and they take on Stanford this week, and poor Stanford. But getting to Tennessee and Pittsburgh, some really good offensive players in this game. And I've said all along, I like Tennessee. I like that offense. It works at lightning pace, speed, and Hendon Hooker and Jabari Small and Cedric Tillman. That's a great threesome there for Tennessee on offense. We'll learn more about Tennessee's defense after this game. I think Kadon Slovis there at quarterback for Pittsburgh, he put up some good numbers in that win over West Virginia. Rodney Hammond's a good-looking running back. Of course, Kalijah Cansey's defensive tackle, Kalijah Cansey for Pittsburgh. He's a good player, and Tennessee's going to have some answers for him because he's a big disruptor. And so is Dennis Servacia, which I watched. This guy was all over the place last week, man. He's a player. Linebacker, he had 10 tackles and a sack, and their cornerback, MJ Devonshire, had the game-winning pick 6. Pat Narduzzi, I said it last week, the guy's he's a good talent evaluator, and he's a good defensive-minded coach. So it'll be interesting to see what they have planned for Tennessee because, they're low to stop on offense. But I like the Vols to go in there and get a big win, and I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I like the Vols 45, Pittsburgh 34. I mentioned Stanford and Georgia. I don't think that's going to be a game. I feel sorry for Stanford, to be honest with you, but hey, they're getting a paycheck out of it. But I think Georgia rolls there. Moving on down to Kentucky and Florida. Kentucky travels to Florida. Another night game in the swamp for the Gators. Kentucky kind of struggled running the ball against Miami of Ohio last week, and that was kind of surprising. But Chris Robinson's out for them. Rodriguez, he's out for them. And so Cavassier Smoke's going to have to pick up the slack. But I thought, Florida, they gave up some yards on the ground last week to Utah. But I think when it was time for them to stiffen up, they did. And they did a pretty good job of their linebacker. Amari Burney and Brenton Cox are really active linebackers. I didn't think Florida's defense was going to be that good this year. But, I was surprised how they played last week against Utah, which, Utah had its chances. They fumbled a ball. They didn't make a goal. Florida stopped them on the goal line once, and then they stopped them on the goal line again at the end of the game. And you got to just tip your hat, to that Florida defense. They bent, but they didn't break. And this team – under Billy Napier, I liked what they were doing on offense. They were running a lot of misdirection. Guys were running all over the place. Of course, Anthony Richardson, he was the talk of college football this week, and rightfully so. The kid's he's a special player, and talent's never been an issue with him. It's just I think now Florida was just a dumpster fire last year, and it was crazy how all that ended. But with this new coaching staff and a bright young head coach and using his talents, they are going to be a difficult team to deal with. But I like Florida in this game. I'll say I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I'll go Florida 30, Kentucky 23. Moving on, USC, Stanford. I mentioned this talking to Chris Gordy. I think USC could potentially be a surprise team this year just because, of their offense. And Caleb Williams, he passed for 2 touchdowns last week. 2 of them were to Jordan Addison, the Pittsburgh transfer. He was the Blitnikoff Award winner last year. Williams also had 68 rushing yards. But this is always a good ball game, and I don't think USC is going to go in there and blow them out. Tanner McKee there at quarterback for Stanford. E.J. Smith, a running back. He had 118 yards on 11 carries last week. Stanford's they almost a 9-point underdog at home. I think this is going to be a good ball game, and I'm going to go USC. I think USC wins the game. I do, and I think it's going to be 30-27. I think it's going to be a tight ball game. Moving on to Arizona State, Oklahoma State. They play at 6:30. Look, Oklahoma State under Derek Mason, their defense gave up 44 points to Central Michigan last week. That's not good. I mean, you can be the highest scoring team all you want, but if you can't stop anybody, that's just no good. I mean, and Spencer Sanders is a great quarterback. Oklahoma State's going to score, but that side of the ball is going to have to tighten up. I still think Oklahoma State wins this game comfortably because Arizona State's not that good. I'll go Oklahoma State 41, Arizona State 30. And moving to Hawaii and Michigan, that's a 7 o'clock game. And I'm hitting on the top 25 kind of real quick here. Hawaii's terrible. Terrible. They're terrible. 6 turnovers against Western Kentucky last year. Michigan, nobody's talking about Michigan. J.J. McCarthy's going to get the start there at quarterback. Their offensive line was blowing Colorado State off the ball last week. I think Michigan rolls here, and I think it's big. I think it's like 58-0, something like that. I mean, it's whatever they want to score. I mean, that's a big line, 51 points, but I think Michigan could easily go. I mean, could easily cover that because, like I said, Hawaii's terrible. Then the late game, Baylor and BYU. This was a good game last year. It's at BYU. Jaron Hall is there at quarterback. He's a really good passer. Christopher Brooks is a big tailback. BYU's got another good offensive line. They're in Provo. They always play tough. That altitude's tough to play in. Brooks carried 13 times for 135 yards and a TD last week. Last year it was a pretty tight game. Baylor won 38-24. Baylor quarterback Blake Shapen, pretty good player. Tay McWilliams there, running back. He's a big kid, kind of like Brooks. So this should be an interesting ball game. I'm going to lean BYU here just because it's in Provo. And I'm going to give that score, let's say, BYU. I think it's going to be a good game too right here. I think Baylor could get them though. I mean, but I like BYU at home, and it's going to be right around that number. I think I like BYU 34, Baylor 30. One game, this is a late game too. Oregon State at Fresno State. I like that coach at Oregon State, and Chance Nolan. He threw for 251 yards and 2 TDs and 2 picks, and their 34-17 win over Boise State last week. They got a tight end, Luke Musgrave, 6'6", 250. He had a big game last week. And it goes back to what I've been saying about these tight ends. We're seeing a reemergence of the tight end position. And just a guy that's 6'6", 250 pounds, and can run and catch. I mean, you don't have many guys on your defense. You might have a defensive lineman that's 6'6", 290 pounds, but he's not going to be running with a tight end. You're going to have linebackers, whether they're 6'1", 220, 6'2", 230, or a safety at 6'1", 225. But the size advantage is huge. So the tight end position is coming, and I like it because I'm an old school guy. I still think you got to run the ball. yeah, you need to be you have to be able to score nowadays in college football, but you got to be able to run the ball, and you gotta find mismatches in the defense, because nowadays basically all defenses are running nickel defense, and there's a lot of speed on the defensive side of the ball, but but the mismatches can be made there with the tight ends, on safeties, on nickel backs, on linebackers. So, and he is a mismatch. And this is my upset of the week right here. I think Oregon State goes to Fresno State and wins. And I'm going to say Oregon State wins 33, Fresno State 29. Going back and hitting on a game here locally, or UAB, they're at Liberty. Dylan Hopkins, back there at quarterback, he played a pretty good game last week. They played Alabama A&M. That game was over in the first quarter. Dwayne McBride, the awesome running back for the Blazers, he didn't play last week. He's going to go this week, and I think him and Jermaine Brown are going to be a tough duo to stop for Liberty. They're not the same team as they were last year. Charlie Brewer, their starting quarterback, who transferred. I think he transferred from Baylor. He might have been somewhere else before that. Okay, it's hard to keep up with where all these dudes move now. Caden Salter's probably going to be the guy there at quarterback. He's a good dual threat. Demario Douglas, I'll tell you what, he's a really good player for Liberty. He doubles as a dynamic kick returner and wide receiver. So UAB secondary is going to have to keep him in the bullseye at all times and know where he is on the field. Liberty won in 4 OT, 4 overtimes last week against Southern Miss, but I think UAB, I think they go in there and I think they get a big win. And I say UAB 27, Liberty 20. All right, guys, that's about it for this week. Going to be back next week, and I'm going to start adding some more content as we go. I'm evaluating a lot of players, and I'm going to keep track of players, and I'm going to keep track of my top players that I see, because I have to watch, football a lot and gather intel on these guys as I go, because like I said, there's so much we don't know about a lot of teams. And again, it's 1 week, so let's don't go overboard on everything here. But I mean, I'm keeping track of players that are impressing me, and guys to look out for. I mean, like just for instance, I'll go back and the Indiana linebacker Cam Jones last week in the win over Illinois. The dude is an animal. And the way he led his team, he got hurt, comes back, led his team, was all over the field. I mean, a guy like Pete Skoronski at Northwestern, I got left tackle. He's been the best lineman that I've seen. I'm not an offensive line guru by any means, but I know when a guy's big and can push people around. I thought there's a couple boys from Michigan that caught my eye, blocking and pulling and blocking. Devontae Stills, defensive lineman, West Virginia, has caught my eye. Jack Campbell, linebacker from Iowa, really good player. I thought the South Dakota State defense, they kicked Iowa's ass. Their defensive line is awesome. I mean, so I thought the Jackrabbits, I mean, they could have won that game, but Iowa's defense stood toe-to-toe with them as well. So I'm keeping track of stuff like this and guys that impress me, and I'm going to make a list of these names that do so, because, the more I can pass on to you is the more that you can know, So, and it makes it fun. I mean, but anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, guys. Good luck to your teams this week. And I'll be back soon to talk with y'all here in the next couple of days. See ya.